What's up, guys? This is another video, and today we'll be talking about general, just, I guess I'll ramble a little bit about, like, the state of the Monotype community at the moment, because I touched on it a little bit in the previous video, but I think I'll talk a little bit more about it now, because I think I definitely have a unique perspective, because I'm not a top player, like, a top player. I'm not terrible, but I'm not, like, a top player that can, like, sway how the metagame goes. I'm also not, like, I'm a decent member of the community. I obviously own a lot of projects. I also do a lot of analyses. I have a badge. I'm very well versed in the community. But yeah, to say that the mono community is in a weird place right now is definitely for certain. So I want you guys to look at something. So I do this every single day. Whenever I log into Pokemon Showdown, play.pokemonshowdown.com, one of the first things that you usually see on the screen is this. Let me just pull it up for you real quick. Let's see. Yeah, so one of the first things you see is this. Also, I'm not logged in for some reason. I don't know why. But what's important here is that I look at the rooms. I'll ignore this, but I look at the rooms and to see how many users they have, because this is how I determine how popular certain metagames are. So I'm gonna talk about VGC in, like, probably another video actually, because this I have a lot to say about, but for now we're gonna look at Monotype. So Monotype actually is, like, really in a pretty good place, I would say. It's right above Espanol, but we've always kind of rivaled Espanol in user numbers. We're above Runes of Alpha right now, but I think that's because Runes of Alpha right now has their community, like, kind of asleep right now, because they're usually above us, and, like, pretty well above us too, so yeah, usually it isn't like this, but Monotype is usually one of the top rooms, and I can definitely consistently say that it's over Wi-Fi and underused. Espanol we kind of fight with, but it's definitely always over underused, and it's always over other metas and runes of, well, not runes of Alpha, but Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi. But yeah, and the reason I talk about this is because Monotype, while it is really popular, it's just not that active. Despite being one of the most popular metagames and being more popular than UU of all things, it is just not as active as you would think. So, like, hold on. So, like, I'm gonna go pull up something else real quick, because I think I'm just gonna actually look up an OU thread real quick. So let me go to the overused room real quick. But yeah, while I pull this up, I just want to talk, like, OU's forum activity is off the charts. Like, it is actually insane how active OU is compared to Monotype. Because, like, whenever I look at an OU forum, I'm just absolutely amazed at how active it is and how many people are constantly talking about stuff. It's actually fascinating, because as someone who's used to, like, Monotype, like, unless there's, like, a new mon or something, no one talks in the discussion thread at all. Like, there's just no discussion. No one says anything, for the most part. Metagame trends do not happen. If a metagame trend happens, it is not talked about in the discussion thread, and that's a huge problem for our metagame, because, let's say we start running, like, Adamant Azumarill, for example. That's a great example. So let's say we start using Adamant Azumarill because we decided, okay, yeah, it's pretty good, it beats pretty much everything, and it destroys a lot of walls like Ferrothorn and stuff. Yeah, we're going to use Adamant Azumarill. All of your Azumarill should be Adamant. The effect that has on the metagame is now that everything that needs to wall or break Azumarill now has to run at least 200 speed. So stuff like Mandibuzz, Braviary, a few others that I'm probably forgetting right now, but basically everyone has to run 200 speed. Now, in OU thread, someone would make a post about this and say, "Hey guys, have you been using 200 speed on Mandabuzz recently?" I mean, yeah, not wait, no, I misphrased that. Have you guys been using 200 speed on Mandabuzz to deal with Adamant Azumarill recently? It's kind of a big threat. And someone else, and then off of that discussion, someone else would maybe talk about how they started using Jolly Azumarill just to beat those, and then that could have an effect on the metagame, because people are constantly talking about, oh, what are we going to do about Azumarill? Like, what's going to happen with Azumarill? In our thread, in the Monotype thread, no one would say a thing. It would just happen. A high-level tour player might say it's good in the chat, in, like, the Monotype room, and then it would get scrolled over, and then no one else would see it. There'd be no information about it whatsoever. And while OU's definitely not perfect, and they don't discuss every nuance in the meta, they at least talk about general changes, like general trends that go on. Alright, I think I have the OU thread up, so I think I'm gonna let you guys take a look at this discussion thread. Alright, so let's take a look at the most recent post that was made on the OU thread. So most recent post was yesterday from, I don't even know who this is, but it doesn't matter. They're talking about, let's see, they're talking about Toxtricity, it looks like, which is pretty interesting. Toxtricity is a niche mon that recently rose. Yeah, look, there's a guy literally talking about who else just doesn't get Toxtricity. And he's talking about the viability of Toxtricity, because I'm pretty sure a lot of other people who don't play OU that often are probably or don't even use Toxtricity that often, are probably wondering why it rose. And they're just like, well, why is Toxtricity here? He asked the question. He literally explains his point. I'm not saying it's a great post, but it's something. It's discussion. Monotype does not have this. This is what I'm trying to get across. But yeah, eventually a top player or someone will probably talk about this post and explain why Toxtricity is good and why it rose. But this is what I'm trying to get across. These players are talking about small metagame nuances that happen. And he talked about this yesterday, and there was actually a discussion held, well, some kind of discussion held about this. And then there's people, like, not even badged users, just unknown relative people, just talking about like the recent bans and their effects. For comparison's sake, let me just go on to the Monotype metagame discussion thread. Let me see where we recently banned something. Oh dear, I went too far down. Yeah, I'm trying to find where we had, because I think there's definitely a thread where, I think this is the same thread. I don't think anything has changed, at least as far as I'm aware. So yeah, this was all at the beginning of the metagame. Notice how small this is, by the way. This is only 8 pages long. OU's is already 12 pages long, and this isn't even from the beginning of the metagame. This is from after the Magearna and Cinderace quick ban, which was recent. They have 12 pages of discussion already, just from this, from August 5th. Meanwhile, our thread has been here since November 15th, 2019, last year, and we only have 8 pages. I'm not trying to say that our community is dead, but good lord, we do not talk about anything. So yeah, Kev made his post about all the types in the generation. This is all early metagame stuff. This is before Dynamax even got banned. Wait, okay, that's weird. Let's see, everyone was basically talking. So yeah, obviously new gen, obviously everyone's gonna talk. So let's see. Yeah, this is us talking about Dynamax in our metagame. going to move into, because I think, what was our first suspect? So our first suspect was Melmetal, obviously. So I'm gonna try and find wherever that is. I think most of it might have been on the Melmetal discussion thread. Yeah, so here's the only post I could see about it. Fernand made a post talking about like why Melmetal is unhealthy, its weaknesses, all that. Pretty informative post, pretty decent post, and then we have this random post that I don't know why it exists. Then there's Roxy, who made another post that was completely irrelevant to Melmetal, and then Melmetal got banned. But yeah, there's literally nothing about this, and after the ban, no one talked about the winners of the Melmetal ban. No one talked about any of the metagame effects that would happen after the Melmetal ban. Nothing happened. We just went straight from Melmetal is now banned. Melmetal is now banned. Yeah, there was like no discussion right after the ban. Basically no discussion. Hart made a post, obviously talking about Melmetal getting banned, but this was almost a full week after Melmetal actually got banned. Yeah, this was pretty much a full week after it got banned. So after a week of it getting banned, they actually decided to talk about like what possible things were better, and this is Kieran Black, which obviously would get banned. And Kieran Black was actually a really interesting case, because I think Kieran Black is actually going to be something I'm going to talk about a lot more in this video series, because when that Pokemon got banned, most of the top players basically said like, oh no, Kieran's actually balanced, it's fine, there's no reason to ban it. But because they never expressed that to the casuals, it got banned. Now, do I think that Kieran Black shouldn't have been banned? Personally, I do think it was a little strong, and it made Dragon a little strong. But I do feel, especially with the DLC now, I feel like most of the types have caught up in power creep and can probably deal with it now. But at the time, it was definitely a little strong. So I can't say I would definitely say it's ban-worthy or not ban-worthy. But obviously, the community, the casuals, all thought that it was ban-worthy. And yeah, Kieran got banned shortly after that. So yeah, yeah, he got banned. But there's like not really a lot of discussion as to why Kieran should get stay. Because yeah, obviously there was. We didn't even talk about. Wait, hold on a second. Did we even talk about Kieran getting banned and its effect on the metagame? Because I don't think we did. I don't think we actually talked about it. Wait, we actually just did not talk about it, did we? Wow, we just literally didn't talk about it. You would think that was a very important thing that we probably should have talked about, but we just didn't talk about it. Bro, it's crazy. It's really crazy. This thread completely skips over the fact that Kieran Black got banned. If we just move straight onto my post about the DLC drop and all the things about that. So yeah, this is my post about new DLC stuff, and yeah, no talk about Kieran Black being banned at all. Obviously there was the discussion thread about Kieran Black, but you would think that people would discuss like what were the effects of it being banned, what gets buffed in the metagame discussion thread, because you know we're discussing the metagame, but there's no conversation about it. So yeah, I've shown you examples of what I'm talking about when I say that this thread is just not active. and as a whole, the community is just very polarized, I would feel. Because they're really in the Monotype community, and I think Ian did mention this a lot to me, and to others as well. And I think it's actually part of the reason why he stepped down, but there's literally 2 Monotype communities. 3 if you count the French as like a separate community, but really they're kind of separate too, in a way. But there's only 2 Monotype communities. We're basically split apart. There's the casuals, and then there's the tournament players. Now, in OU, this is kind of the same thing, but I feel like there's definitely a little bit more mesh. There's a little more mesh between tiers, and I definitely do feel like in OU, you could definitely still make a name for yourself on the ladder and still be respected and all that without playing in tournaments that often, because Storm Zone's a great example. Most players respect Storm Zone and his ladder strategies, and they don't flame him for using whack teams. But meanwhile, if you do that in Monotype, you get flamed outright and just told that your strategies are bad and the type that you're using is bad. And that's because we have a tier leader that usually supports in the bashing of newer players. So I won't say who exactly, but I think everyone can pretty much come to their conclusion about who that is. Also, we have to talk about how we treat casuals in general, just in chat, in forums, because like I'm not gonna I'm not gonna show you like a specific example because that would make me have to go dig, and there's no examples on this metagame thread anyway. But in past metagame threads, there's obviously been like a lot of casuals that would come on, try and talk about something, and then we would immediately just wait for, as I said, as I used to say back when I was making threads back then, we would just wait for Ian basically to shut the person down and to basically make their argument useless and worthless. So yeah, basically you wouldn't have a discussion or like talk about anything. It was basically just flex our superiority over you in the metagame, or you're just terrible. And it's honestly pretty toxic, very, very toxic, but unfortunately we don't have leadership that actually wants to go out and really be with the casuals and help them improve and like help them love Monotype. We just don't have a tier leader or leadership right now that's really looking forward into doing that. And that's why I personally wasn't happy when Ian stepped down, but I can understand why he felt like doing it, because first of all, this metagame is terrible. Second of all, terrible to be a tier leader of. But second of all, yeah, just talking about 2 different communities, and like it's really hard to define like what you say when you say that there's a community. And I feel like the Kieran Black suspect is definitely the best example of this, because you had 2 separate communities talking about it. You had the smaller tournament community, and then the bigger casual community. And the casual community voted out Kieran Black because the competitive community didn't say anything about why it's actually not ban worthy. At least not clearly to them, and by the time they actually realized that they had to mention it, that it wasn't broken, it was too late, and all the casuals had already made up their minds. That could have been avoided completely if they actually made their points clear, but because they only talk in their circles, they lost the vote because they were outnumbered. So yeah, that's just one of the biggest problems with Monotype, because you could say that this is prevalent in every tier, but I feel like it's especially prevalent in Monotype, because let me pull up an interview with one of our tier leaders real quick, but he mentions in this interview that essentially Monotype is a close-knit community, or tightly knit community, I think that's what he says. And basically what that means is that that's the diplomatic way of saying that it's small and the way I like it, or something like that. Basically, it's just his way of saying, like, I'm glad that we don't have a huge amount of stupid people in our community. But yeah, this is the same tier leader that also calls everyone stupid. But yeah, we won't go too much into that. But yeah, actually, I pretty much said what I need to say about that, so I don't think I need to pull it up. But yeah, for the most part, this community is like not going to grow unless we reach out to we reach out more. Because I feel like if it wasn't for people like Skipinion and Ion doing such great jobs of getting the community out there and just making Monotype seem more fun and like more inviting, if it wasn't for them, I would say that Monotype would not have gotten as big as it has, especially if we didn't embrace our casual community. But because we're really mean to our casual community nowadays, and we don't really invite them as much, we're not getting as much. We're not having as much retention, and we're also just not getting that many new players. Now, obviously, there's the fact that Monotype just isn't as popular as OU, and it's obviously like a more niche metagame. But I definitely do feel like it could be bigger, and I definitely feel like it could be respected more if we A, had the right players, and B, had a community that wasn't basically two separate communities. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this for today. But feel free to subscribe if you like that. Make sure to talk about some stuff in the comments below. I'll probably respond to you guys if you have any like questions about how I feel about certain things and like the way Monotype community works. My name's been Namranan, and thank you guys for tuning in. Hope you guys have a great day.